to broadcast first.
I'm actually starting to broadcast.
Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started shortly.
Thanks, Megan.
Thank you for joining us today, everyone. We're going to get started shortly.
All right.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's LINKEDSENIOR webinar. Today, we will be providing one free NCAP and NCC-DP CEU credit. We are not offering NAB CEU credit today. In order to be eligible for the CEU credit, you do need to remain on this webinar for the full hour. The Zoom meeting room will track how long you stay in the room and will send that as a digital report to me. We are not able to provide CEUs to people who join only by phone. You must be logged into the Zoom room today. At the end of the webinar, I will provide the required post-webinar CEU survey evaluation link in the webinar room chat box, and I will also send it by email this afternoon. Please be sure to check your email spam folder in case it lands there. If you don't receive the link, please email me right away so that I can send it to you directly. I am pasting my email in the chat box right now so that you can contact me after the webinar today if you need to about CEU credit. Please be sure to fill out the CEU survey no later than midnight this Thursday, August 6th to be eligible for the CEU credit. If you are not looking for CEU credit today, we still want your feedback, so please go ahead and fill out the short survey as well. CEU certificates will be issued by email on Friday, August 7th this week. Again, please check your spam folder in case that email lands there. You will also receive a PDF of today's slide deck presentation and a recording of today's webinar by email later this afternoon. We will be live streaming this event in our Activity Strong Facebook group, but for CEU credit, you must be logged into the Zoom room. I'll now hand it over to Charles de Vilmorin, CEO and co-founder of LINKEDSENIOR.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Megan. Welcome, everyone. Like Megan said, my name's Charles and I'm with LINKEDSENIOR. And it's a pleasure, a real pleasure actually, to welcome everyone today as we discuss a key to the past symbols and validation. And with us, we have Odile Leveau, who is a validation teacher with the Validation Training Institute. And I just want to pause here, and as I've done in the past, but I think it's important to do it as much as possible. I'd like to take a moment to thank everyone on the phone right now in the audience that is in a position to engage the older adult, to honor their preferences, and to help them continue to live with purpose. I was reminded recently, actually as far as this morning, that regardless of COVID, our job is to make sure that our elders, our residents, continue to live with purpose. So with that, let me take a moment to share one aspect, which is that in Zoom there's two features. There's the chat and the Q&A. Odile, in her presentation, will be asking you questions. Feel free to use the chat. If you have a question that you want us to answer at the end, feel free to use the Q&A. So just as a reminder, we will not monitor the chat for questions for the end of the presentation. With that said, welcome everyone again. Thank you very much for what you do. It is an honor to be able to work with you, and I will now take us through the beginning of the presentation. So just to give you some background, and for some people that are returning, this is just a reminder. We at LinkedSenior started these webinar series more than 2 years and a half ago with the sole intent to improve the quality of the life of elders living in senior living. And we understand that in order to do that, the first thing we should do is empower you, the staff, activities and life enrichment directors, as you are essential to the quality of the life of the residents. We believe that the more we give you tools such as educational things, the more you will be suited and equipped to, again, improve the quality of the life of the residents you serve. We've been extremely fortunate to have, I don't know how many now, we've done so many, but in the end, fantastic speakers, including today's, that really draw expertise from a wide range of disciplines and knowledge, again, with the whole idea is to give you the best practices and the best ideas to do what it is that you do every day, which is to help the older adult live with purpose. One note about this is we are always open to feedback. If you believe there is somebody or a topic that we should consider, please email us. We take every single email. We read them, obviously, and we take every single suggestion really seriously. We do talk about it with the team, and a lot of our speakers are there because of a request or a suggestion. So your voice counts. With that, I'd like to just tell you a little bit about LinkedSenior, which is a company that I founded. We provide tools for professionals like you to do the work that you do, which is to engage the residents in senior living. We're based in Washington, D.C., and we serve everything from IL to assisted living to memory care and the nursing home environment. Our work is evidence-based in the sense that we conducted a large study, which was extremely meaningful in terms of outcomes that you can see on this slide. So meaningful that it was actually published in a peer-reviewed journal in September. So if you're interested in thinking about how to these measurable outcomes in your communities or organization, obviously feel free to contact us. With that, I'd like to share the fact that we are the people, as you know, behind the Activity Strong initiative, which is our way to giving back to the industry and actually acknowledging the essential work that you do every single day when you walk into your community and go and engage your residents. So to acknowledge your work, to educate you, as we're doing right now, with quality education and empower you. So with that, please stay tuned for the end of today's webinar as we have important announcements. And as you might know, we are also the people behind the Old People Recording Initiative, which we started, I think, now almost 5 years ago, because we believe, although that we are in a very ageist society, we believe that we have the power to change things. And it starts with the discussion, and that discussion is about the fact that everyone is cool, including old people. So with that, I'm actually super excited to take us to our presentation today. So as always, I'll give a few words of introduction, and then I will let Odile get into the presentation. And the few thoughts that I'd like to share with you as we navigate COVID-19, one of the things that struck me the most in our presentation last week is what Melissa said from Oral Gardens, is that we should think of the fact that we shouldn't try to fight COVID-19 anymore. We should try to understand how to live with it. And for me personally, it stuck with me in a sense that I believe it applies to everyone around the globe right now, and it has different sets of applications. So, the big question is, as we think about being activity strong, as we think about activities and life enrichment and what we do every day, you know, how is tomorrow going to be? Like, we don't really know, but there are certain things that we do believe, right? There are certain things that we do hold as truth. And I'd like just to share a couple of things about that. And that's my way to introduce Odile and the work of the validation method, which is that there is nothing more important to you right now taking care of yourself, right? It's the analogy of the oxygen mask. When the airplane has trouble, you need to put your mask first, otherwise you cannot help other people. It is one of the main aspects of the validation training, the validation methods training, is to understand the power of centering before you engage an older adult. And I'm extremely excited about what Odile is going to share with us about that. The second thought is also extremely important, and in a moment of crisis, it's difficult to remember, but it is important to what we do every day, which is that if resident engagement is about collaborating with our elders, with our older adults, with our residents, then communication is the way to get there. And we know that nothing is more important than to be heard, right? This is how everything starts. This is how communication with kids, with anyone in society, and our residents starts. And this is also one of the reasons why I'm extremely excited to have Odile present with us today. With that, I'd love to introduce you now, almost semi-formally, to Odile, as she is the validation teacher for the Validation Training Institute. I'll just share two other things. One is extremely important about Odile is, like me, she's French, so she has to be the best. No, that's a joke, but she is French, and I think that's cool. The other thing also is that, just so you know, in terms of background, I personally went through the training of the Validation Training Institute. I am a validation worker level 1, and I can tell you by far that both personally, for me as a human being, but also professionally to understand our industry, it is one of the best trainings that I have ever done in my life. So I would urge you to consider it for yourself, for anyone that works with people that live with a cognitive impairment or some level of dementia, or even for your organization if you have a way to start that conversation. So with that, thank you very much. Thank you for being here today with us, spending some time with us, and I'll let Odile take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Hello, everybody. Thank you for your introduction. And yeah, you said exactly what I'm going to say. So at least we're on the same wavelengths. And yeah, validation is fantastic. And actually, Vicky de Klerk has done a couple of webinars in this series already. So I'm not going to start from scratch. And the webinars, or part of them, are available in the resource page. So I invite you to look at them. But I'll build on what Vicky has said. And if you want to go to the next slide, Charles.
Yeah.
This will be a summary of what I'm going to talk about today. So briefly, I'll remind things about the validation method. Then I'll talk about my personal experience, how I found empathy and curiosity for older adults with cognitive decline. Then we'll do together a centering exercise, and you'll see how to recognize a symbol, and I'll give you as many examples as time allows. Next slide, please. So who developed the validation and why? So this is a portrait of Naomi File, and she worked as a social worker and with older adults. And through her experience and her needs, she really wanted to know more, to understand more about what was happening with those with Alzheimer's and related disorders in the later stages of life. So she developed a theory, attitude, and technique approximately from 1963 to 1980, And then she started doing a lot of workshops. She's really good at those workshops where she role plays situations and explain how to handle them. And validation is still very much alive, and it's in many countries in the world. And Naomi is still helping the validation and the spread of validation. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to let you know what it means for me to practice validation. And I practice validation pretty much every day. Know your client as a unique individual. Be non-judgmental, extremely important. Expression of feelings is a positive healing thing. And sometimes we don't like that. The feelings are hurtful, they seem strange, they seem very difficult to accept, but it's a positive healing thing. And the last thing, maybe the most important, empathy is the key to stepping into the shoes of another human being. Next slide, please. So I want to tell you a little bit about me and how I realized that just through my life history, I developed empathy and curiosity for older adults with cognitive decline. I moved from France to California approximately 30 years ago, and I was an accordion player. I mention those two things because they are connected to the world of aging, and I'll show you how. I experienced changing country, leaving my family and my friends, deciding what I could take with me and what I had to give away. And when I arrived here, I had language difficulties, I still do sometimes, and not understanding, not being, asking for help, feeling stupid, powerless. And years later, when I started working in a nursing home, I realized that my changes, my losses, my difficulties communicating were similar to what happens to older adults, especially when they move to residential care and where then their cognition is declining. So going personally through that big change, it gave me more empathy for older adults. And the accordion, well, obviously seniors are the best audience for accordion. When I landed in California looking for work, I had no connections. So I called activity directors. They hired me. Entertaining seniors became my main job. And I noticed that the audience was looking at me, luckily, but I was also observing the participant. And as much as they were entertained by me, I was entertained by them. Maybe because it was a new country, I was curious how people were expressing themselves, how the group was functioning, how the staff was reaching out, was reacting to everybody. And I remember one show in an assisted living, there were maybe 30 people, and I was standing pretty close to the residents because there was no stage. And after the first song, a woman shouted at me from the front row, "Don't play so close to me. You're using up all the air." Well, nobody had ever told me that. Of course, I moved away immediately from her, and I was really stunned. And the other residents were offended by her remark, and they were telling her, "Stay quiet, not that politely, and get out of here." And to me, they say, "Go ahead, play, don't pay attention to her." So I continued to play. I finished the show, but I kept thinking of those words, of all the possible meanings and her feelings. What was she thinking? And I wish I would have been to explore what she really meant. I didn't know how, and frankly, I was scared. So I played many more shows, and I had more experience like that. And I became really interested in the participants who seemed a little different, who had unusual verbal and nonverbal behaviors. And this is why I decided to study recreation therapy. I wanted a job where I could put the accordion down and fully listen, be present. And just before graduating, I was invited to my first validation workshop. And this was presented by Naomi Feil, and it was in San Francisco. That day, that morning, I decided I wanted to be a validation teacher. This was what I needed, the key to the meaning of the mysterious behaviors and words. Next slide, please. Before we advance further in the world of symbols, I want to acknowledge, and Charles just did it also, that this time right now is not an ordinary time. We have gone through a lot of changes. And personally, I noticed that my brain doesn't function as it used to. And maybe you also, you have had a hard time focusing. You are not as productive, as energetic, as good as you used to be. Maybe sometimes you feel sad. You tear up easily. You feel angry. It's normal. We're experiencing collective grief. And this is what grief is. It's unexpected. It knocks you down. We don't know when it will end. Some days we feel good. Some days we cannot function at all. I recommend be gentle with yourself. Use all the self-help resources you can gather. Be aware of your limitations. Accept them as much as possible. Validation teaches us to start from where we are, not where we wish we would be. And we cannot accept our residents if we don't accept ourselves. Next slide, please. And this is part of the validation attitude. Accept and value the verbal and nonverbal communication of the disoriented older adult. Next slide, please. So the acceptance starts with us. And to help you be in the present, I'm going to guide you through a centering exercise. So get comfortable in your chair or stand up if you prefer, if you can. Let go of everything you might be holding in your hand. Maybe shake your hands a little bit. Put your feet flat on the ground. Close your eyes. Relax your arms and hands. Relax your shoulders, your chest, your belly. Let your pelvis relax against the chair if you are seated. Let your thigh, your legs, your knee relax. Feel your feet on the floor. Wiggle your toes. Gently tap your heels. Feel your entire body. Notice your breathing without changing it. How are you breathing right now? Is your chest moving up and down? Do you sense your heartbeat? Try to breathe deeper, deep down into your belly. Take longer breaths in and longer breaths out. We are going to take 3 big breaths together. Breathe in through your nose, deep down into your belly. Breathe out through your mouth. Breathe in through your nose, deep down into your belly. Breathe out through your nose and mouth. Breathe in through your nose and breathe out through your mouth. And now go back to normal breathing. You're going to slowly open your eyes. Don't focus on anything. Look around the room without judgment. Go back to the screen and go back to your seat if you were standing. Now we're back together. Centering is the very first validation technique. It is the first thing to do when you're starting to communicate. It's also the first technique because it's the most important. You cannot access empathy, you cannot access curiosity, be available if you're not centered. Next slide, please. Center regularly. Practice centering throughout your day to get into the habit. Center each time you feel stressed. Center before you communicate, especially if the resident is upset, and especially if you don't know how to respond. Next slide, please. Now that we are centered, we can pay attention to symbols. Symbols are a key to the past. It's why they are so important. In order to communicate, we need to notice, respect, and when possible, understand the messages sent by our residents. The more we understand, the more we can respond in a way that will stimulate a response in return. Right now, there are less group activities. Sometimes there are no groups at all. And despite the room visits, many residents spend more time alone than before. And many disoriented residents don't understand what's going on and why their family stopped visiting. You might see new behaviors. You might see more behaviors, verbal and nonverbal, that are difficult to understand. I hope that being able to identify some symbols will help you respond better to your residents' need. Let me tell you about Mrs. Griffiths and the way she was using a symbol. Mrs. Griffiths was a nursing home resident I met 10 years ago. She was in her mid-80s. She had a strong personality. She had enjoyed a career as an activity director, and she liked to tell the staff what to do. As soon as there was something wrong with activities, nursing, dietary, or anywhere, she would pick up her phone and complain to the administrator, and he was scared of her. She was tall, she was well-dressed, she liked to wear makeup. She was always trying to look her best. She was walking with a walker. After she turned 90, she had health problems. She spent time in the hospital. And when she returned to the nursing home, she was not able to walk anymore. A staff member was pushing her wheelchair, but Mrs. Griffiths insisted to take her walker along. It was difficult because the staff member had to push the wheelchair as well as the walker, and it was a heavy walker that did not fold, and it was taking the whole width of the hallway. I talked to the staff and they told me that Mrs. Griffiths insisted on always bringing her walker, despite being unable to use it. And if the staff was refusing to drag the walker, Mrs. Griffiths would say angrily, "If I cannot bring the walker, I'm not going." And the team decided to write about the walker in the care plan because the behavior seemed so important to Mrs. Griffiths. Every staff should be aware of it and respect it. And this behavior lasted a couple of years until Mrs. Griffiths became much weaker and rarely left her room. Mrs. Griffiths was using a symbol. Next slide, please. So how do you recognize a symbol? The object is used in an unusual way. The person is focused on the object and refuses to give it up. The symbol has meaning. So the facial expression expresses purpose and satisfaction. And there's an emotional intensity, and a symbol might be used repeatedly. So she uses the walker in an unusual way. And I have a question for you if you want to write in the chat. What is the meaning of the walker for Mrs. Griffiths? What does it represent? So just type whatever you think about. There is actually many different answers. Well, I can see independence, like a security blanket, autonomy, independence, yeah. Independence, freedom, yeah, when you can walk, of course. Hope, oh, I'm going to cry. Hope, it's hers. And I would even say it's her. Wow, thank you for writing. You know, it's so beautiful. So this is really what I want to show you today, how we can switch from, oh, she's really bothering everybody by dragging her walker along, to, no, it's her. It's really a chance for us to explore, you know, things about her. Yeah, herself, it's herself. And I really like that she picked this big, cumbersome object, and it's why I told you about her, because she's a big person. She has a big personality. And yeah, she can look like a little old lady now she's using the wheelchair, but it's not true. She is big, she's still big, and she wants us to know it. Well, thank you so much. These beautiful answers. And next slide, please. So this is a definition of a symbol. There are many definitions of a symbol. You know, symbols are all over psychology and all over our lives. But this is one we use mostly in validation. A symbol is an object or person in the present that represents a significant object or person from the past with emotional significance. So in that sense, you know, that walker really represented Mrs. Griffiths and all the dimensions of her that she was not able to do right now. And frankly, a symbol can also be a thing like independence, you know, a concept, so or freedom or love, you know, many things represent love. And here are car keys, which are a very important symbol in our society. And this is going to be the object of a little video. So Charles, if you want to start the little video now, thank you.
Where's my car keys? I had them here just a minute ago, and now they're gone.
I have the car keys. I'm your driver.
When did that happen? I've been driving since I was 14 years old. I have a driving license. I can drive.
Well, now you're 88, and it's been a long time since you've driven.
That is a lie. A bare-faced lie. You just don't want me to drive, that's all. Now you give me those keys now, you bastard.
Myrna, quit being so aggressive.
I'm not aggressive.
A better relationship can be established when a caregiver doesn't argue or try to convince a disoriented older adult of the truth. When there is trust, Myrna can express her feelings and feel heard. That brings her relief. Remembering the past helps her mourn the losses she now feels. Using a few simple techniques like rephrasing, reminiscing, and exploring with open questions, Chris can diffuse the situation and help Myrna feel better.
Where are my car keys? I had them here just a minute ago. Did something happen to
Myrna,
them?
I have the car keys.
Well, you give them to me.
I'm your driver.
What? Huh, I've been driving since I was 14 years old. You give me back my car keys. I know how to drive.
Since you were 14 years old,
That's right.
who taught you to drive?
My dad, and he was very careful. He was a very good teacher. He smacked me when I made the wrong turn.
And what kind of car did you have?
We
What was
had
your first car?
We had a little Volkswagen with a sunroof, and yeah, it was so nice. And I would put my hand out of the sunroof and wave to people.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
nice. It sounded like it was a nice car.
Oh, my dad, he let me drive. Yeah,
It's very nice.
yeah.
Next slide, please. So in this really short video, there's a lot. And you can see how literally the car keys are a key to the past. If you are able to ask the right question, instead of provoking anger, you will provoke this beautiful reminiscence. So I just want to go back a little bit in detail of what's happening in the three parts of this video. So the first part, the discussion is not going well. The driver is not listening. He has no empathy, no curiosity. He just wants to drive, that's it. And he definitely doesn't want her to drive, that's for sure. And the result, Myrna gets angry. Then you have a little teaching moment with Vicky de Klerk. And what she says, don't argue, very important. Don't argue. Rephrase, which is mostly repeating, so the person will be sure she's heard because you're able to repeat what she says, so it means you have heard it. And then ask open question. And then you see the good result. Of course, it's what the driver does, and they go into this really nice conversation about the beginning of the driving when she was 14. And so this is really success. And personally, car, it's why I put a little bit of car question, car answers, car discussion on this slide, because I hear a lot about cars. I don't know if it's because it's America and cars are so important. I also think this is one of the tragedies that happen to old people, is the days that the driver license is taken from them, the car is taken from them. It's a huge, huge transition. and they need to heal that. And of course, it might, bring up other painful transition in their life. It's often what happens when we try to heal something, something else comes up. So here I'm just going to look at the slide for a moment. So where are my car keys? This is a question in the video, but it could come, in the middle of a group, out of the blue. Where are my car keys? Because 30 years later, the person who is in your group would have come with a car. And so there will be car question. And often it's also, where did I park my car? Or I have to leave the group now because I think I parked my car in the wrong spot. The person is in a wheelchair. She's 99, she hasn't driven. So it's very important not to argue, not to judge, to rephrase. Maybe you can repeat, oh, where did you park your car? Where could your car be? And then go, inquire. We call that inquire about the car. What's the color of your car? When is the last time you used it? Where do you usually park? And often also the need, like, where are you driving to? Because often the car or the car key leads you to, I need to visit my mother. I need to pick my children at school. The past, a need from the past, how people were functioning in the past. And it's where disoriented people with cognitive loss, it's where they go. They go in the past, they go back to functioning years. And often also they go back to initial trauma, we call it unfinished business. Maybe sometimes they forgot to go to the school and something happened. Sometimes they forgot to visit their parents, or they could not because they were sick. So I'm absolutely sure you have had car questions, and I really encourage you to explore them as much as possible. Next slide, please. So I was mentioning the needs, and this is where symbols often lead to a need, where you can have a conversation. Like, we agreed together with Mrs. Griffiths. She has this need to be recognized, to be seen, and this need to hope, and this need to be listened to. So this slide shows you four categories of basic human needs that you might encounter or arrive at when you start exploring a symbol with open question. And there's a feel safe and secure. This is a need often when people say, I want to go home. And home, and bad answer, this is your home. No, for some reason, that it doesn't feel like their home, because maybe their mother is not there, their children are not there. So they want to go home to feel safe and secure. And it's a very deep need. It's not because they don't like the curtains that are in their window here. It's not maybe even because they don't like the food, but they want to feel safe and secure like they used to. And, now it's also why they say, why does my family not visit? It goes from that very, very basic feeling of we all need to feel safe and secure. And sometimes there's even the question, where do I sleep tonight? Who do I see to book the room? I didn't book a room for tonight. So this is that need. Of course, make sense of reality. This is, we cannot make sense of reality now. So imagine what it is when you can't figure out, the pandemic. So they will bring up, other complicated situation to try to make sense. We're in World War II, we're in an earthquake. We are, in a moment that was so complicated and strange in their past. And of course, being heard is the most important, and sensory stimulation. This is, what's so important now, that they can't get out, they don't have as much stimulation than they used to, so how to replace that. So this is where the symbol leads you. And next slide, please. So this is a list of symbols that I encounter very often. So it's just, you know, to show you, you can go through it, and I'm pretty sure you have encountered it and what it could mean. So I want to talk about the meaning. Sometimes we don't know the meaning, especially if the person is not verbal. And we don't really have to guess. What I want you to remember is just know that it could be something really important, especially if you see the person has an emotional attachment to the object. You cannot take it away. It becomes really a big fight if you want to take the thing away. And there is satisfaction when the person is, you know, in the presence of the object, like looking through her bag, folding the napkins, collecting the silverware from the dining room in their bag. It makes them really happy, stroking their hand, thinking of their baby, maybe a baby they have lost. So if you see this quality of big attention, it means this is a symbol. This is very important for the person. And this is where it's time to care plan it. It's time to inform all the team that this particular resident has this behavior, and the team should really respect it. And maybe it will take, you know, time to understand. Maybe the family will say, you know, that she was an accountant, and so all these napkins she's folding all day long, this is the important papers, and she put them aside. And I want to talk a little bit about safety, because sometimes we tend, especially now, we clean everything, you know, everything has to be clean, clean, clean. And this could be, again, a source of fight. So just be aware of that. You know, I know we'll have rules to follow, but just be aware that cleaning deeply someone's bag, it's like cleaning, separating her from herself. You know, if she had a full bag full of old cup of something preciously saved, and bananas that were overripe, and half sandwich, and of course it needs to be cleaned, but it was herself. It was a little home, a little secret space, and this could be really difficult. So do it with a maximum empathy, a lot of, and maybe slowly, and maybe do it with her as a discussion, you know, how do you use this? And it's never easy, but it's, yeah, do respect. I want to talk a little bit about the ring and the jewelry. I think, yeah, we have a few minutes. You might hear, I lost my ring, or even you stole my ring, you stole my necklace. So first thing to do, center. If it gets really, really bad, because then you become a symbol of something, just ask another staff member to process the emotion there. But this often means my husband was stolen to me. You know, the person that gave me the ring has disappeared, is not there anymore. So, and the person might actually have a ring. So it's important to ask open question about those disparition, the thing that disappeared, that are stolen. What did it look like? How long have you had it? Who gave it to you? You know, don't say, no, it was not stolen, because in their emotions, it has been stolen. The husband has been stolen, maybe by death, you know, or maybe this was the first lover that gave them that ring, and then he went to war, and then the ring disappeared, and they had to marry someone else. And you know, you will get into a lot of stories, and sometimes it's too late to tell the stories. They can't articulate it, but the story is there as an emotion that will come out. Next slide, please. So this is the last slide for today. And I just want to encourage to visit the validation website, the American validation website. It's vfvalidation.org. This is where I found this little video, and there are many more. There's ways to learn validation. I mean, there's just information. There's also books. There are books for families that you can recommend to families. So when they connect, especially now it's difficult to connect through, you know, distance connecting. So I think it's really good if the family has idea of what good communication is, and even the family can center and relax before they make the phone call. So all these resources are available there. And thank you very much for listening. And we have a little time for questions or comments.
Yeah, thank you so much, Odile. It's fantastic. I love your story about how you came and how you got into validation. We had a few questions. One of them was by Megan Murphy, where she explains that she has been using validation. So great job, good job, Megan. But she's been using validation for residents that are showing sundowning behavior. And it seems that Megan is doing it several times with the residents. And it helps, but only for a short amount of time, where the residents would start again, the same wandering and so on and so on. So I guess the question here simply is, what would you recommend if the behavior expression continues, you know, sometime after we've helped the residents through the first occurrence?
So I will give my own theory on sundown, which comes out of my personal experience. So sundowning is, it's at the end of the day, there is more difficult behavior, more disorientation. And my personal experience is people are tired, especially when the world doesn't really make sense to you, when you have to struggle a lot. And these people sometimes have physical, I've worked mostly in nursing homes, so people have physical challenges. So by 3, 4 o'clock, they are tired. So it might be beyond the validation, but I try to do everything possible to acknowledge that they are tired. So not, you know, do everything the most relaxing possible, and anticipate maybe that way to be tired, like have a really calm environment and just not ask much from them. And so that would be more the time I would do, you know, some soft things. So this, but you know, and validation, this is also something you learn by doing validation regularly, which is fantastic. You learn how, you know, everybody's unique, so how people react. And also, unfortunately, what I noticed with the sundowning, it's often the change of shift. In California, which the change of shift is between 3 and 4, and it's often where the staff is not available. So I notice a dip in the attention the residents are receiving, and this is the whole prime of person-centered care. Me, I would really like to stagger the shift, so there's never a big dip. And there is also, so it, for me, the sundowning is a huge thing of environment and organization. And I always encourage people to look at the environment. And maybe we are tired too at the end of the day. So we might not react the same way. So I don't know if it answers your question, but it's my experience.
I think it's at least good advice, and I'm sure it's helpful. Another question that came up was, could you explain the difference, or if you're trained in validation, what should be the view on purely redirecting people? If you have any thoughts about that.
Yes, I do. So
I think it's very important. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah. Well, so redirecting is like, you know, a person is angry, like, for example, you know, the car keys. So Myrna she wants those car keys. So you don't really address the car key. You say, oh, Mirna, look, I brought your favorite chocolate cake. Let's share it now. You know, completely forgot the car keys and go into the chocolate cake. And honestly, it could work, but it's not what we're after in validation. In validation, we're after that key to the past that, by the way, they give to us. You know, it's so fantastic that Myrna is telling what she wants to talk about. She wants to say that she has been driving since she's 14. She wants to reminisce about that. So why bring in a chocolate cake when she didn't talk about chocolate cake? She talked about that. So this is what we think about redirection. This being said, there's more than, you know, one way to deal with people, and, you know, sometimes redirection. If yourself, you're not centered, it's not a good day for you, you're not available for empathy, go for redirection, go for the chocolate cake, you know, because it's us. And validation can be intense. You know, the emotions are not always pleasant emotions that come up, and you need to feel strong. So I think this is a place of redirection. If you don't feel strong, and I told you, you know, look at where you are and just admit where you are. So if it's not a day of validation, go for redirection.
Great, thank you so much. And we have a few questions also. How do you start? Where do you find resources about validation? And maybe to be helpful to the audience, we could take the context of COVID. Like if somebody wanted to start today with validation, what would you recommend, Odile?
Well, I recommend to go to the website, and there are actually more and more online classes at all levels. There's big classes that Charles took, but they are small modules. So there's really a whole range of classes now, and online. So really COVID is not a problem. Yeah. And I would say if anything, you can buy the books. They are very available. So there's a reference on the website. There's a couple of really good books.
Thank you so much, Odile. You know, for me, even if I was trained in the validation, one thing that I was reminded of is, you know, to help our residents throughout the day and just to communicate with them. One way is to think about the object itself, but one way also in our work as being a detective, we can think also about what are the key potential needs that the person might have, right? So if you're looking to connect something to something, you could consider both approaches. So thank you very much for your time, Odile. If anyone is interested in the validation method, obviously look into the resources that Odile mentioned, but also please feel free to contact her with any questions you might have. So I'm showing her email right now, and I can tell you that besides being French, which is fantastic, Odile is also a fantastic teacher for the validation method. And I highly encourage you to consider this as a way, again, to improve you as a human being, your work with your residents, with your team members, and what your organization does. So thank you so much, Odile, for your presentation.
You're very welcome.
I'd like to make just a couple of announcements before we wrap up today's presentation, which is one, we've had a number of requests as we're going through COVID and as social isolation has obviously become the #1 topic beyond COVID. And these questions were about how can we easily explore LINKEDSENIOR. So in order to make that as easy as possible, what we've decided at LINKEDSENIOR is to allow for very quick demos of what it is that we do. You don't have to commit to anything. You just sign up. It's a quick 30 minutes where you get general overview. And we're going to be holding these on Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern starting tomorrow. So in the follow-up email you're going to get from us from Zoom, we're going to include the links for you to register. And thank you we've had already a lot of people register to these, so we're excited to start talking to you. And again, there's no commitment, it's just to give you an idea of how one tool you might consider would be LINKEDSENIOR. The other thing I'd like to make an announcement on is really important about Activity Strong is that we have just finalized the speakers for our Tuesday, September 15th gathering. So some of you might remember the super successful summit that we had on June 23rd. And we decided to partner with NAP and NCAP to continue activities strong. And one example is today's webinar with Odile. And in the future, we will be having gatherings. So think like 3 hours events, smaller than the summit, where you can get 3 CEUs. And I'm really excited about the speakers today. As you can see, they're fantastic. They're very knowledgeable leaders in our work. And I also would like to mention to you that we have decided that these gatherings are going to have a theme. And each gathering and event until next year is going to focus on an element of engagement. So the first one is going to be focused on how we get to know our resident, the assessment piece, the interview, and the finding out. Right, a little bit of what we talked about today, which is how do you understand who the resident is. So, one of you might ask, well, how do we find out about these events? And the easiest way is to go to activitystrong.com, and we've just enabled a registration page under the event tab, where you can register for all the upcoming events, all the upcoming gathering that we have. So again, highly recommend you book your seat and you consider joining us as we will continue to advance the Activity Strong platform. With that, I wanted to just share with you also 2 of our upcoming webinars, August 25th, focusing on positive psychology. That presentation is going to be awesome because Nancy Richardson and Jennifer Taylor are going to position the idea of positive psychology in the context of COVID. You might remember they came in last year and it was one of our best webinars of 2019. And on September 22nd, we have Katie Abbott, one of the lead researchers behind the work of PELI, the Preference of Everyday Living Instrument, who's going to be talking about Stronger Together, how we combat isolation by understanding preferences. Again, really this core idea of focusing on the first step of engagement, of activities, of rec therapy. And here are the upcoming gathering dates. With that, we're right at 2 p.m. Wanted to thank you again, Odile, for being with us today. Thank you so much for your insights. And as I started today's presentation, I want to remind you, everyone on the line, how important you are, how essential you are. And the first step to take that in is please take care of yourself and maybe, just maybe, consider Odile's advice, which is to center. Next time you have something difficult, whatever it is, could be at work or outside of work, consider the exercise that we did together. It was free, just take a few seconds, and it is probably the best thing that you could do in the difficult day. With that, I wish you not a difficult day, but a fantastic day and week. And again, thank you for the work that you do. Take care.
The required CEU survey is now in the webinar chat box. Charles, you can end the recordings. And just remember to fill out that CEU survey before midnight this Thursday, and your CEU certificate will be emailed to you by the end of the day on